What's up? This is Richie from the Where We Wild YouTube channel. Today I got a KASTKING Royale Legend 2. Gonna tear it all apart, tune it up, get it running nice and smooth, so if you're at home trying to take yours apart, you can follow along and hopefully it'll help you out. Let's get into it. All right. KASTKING Royale Legend 2. Royale with cheese. Let's see what happens here, man. Gonna start with this handle here. Got to get that off. Gonna start with a little flathead screwdriver. You can go with a Phillips if you like. I just prefer the flathead because they seem to take a little bit better care of these screws usually. This one might be a little small. There we go. Actually works quite well. Oops. You got your little cover here you're gonna knock off or dump. Then we have what I guess would be a 10 millimeter. This is a left-handed reel. Is it gonna be going to the right or the left? Right, clockwise. Okay, just wanna bust it loose. Keep tension on it. And just slip that nut off. Keep some tension on that star drag. Usually a spring underneath there. You don't want it to go flying on you. Got your handle. I'm just gonna slowly let the pressure off. Pull this thing up. Spring get stuck under there? Yes, it did. All right, underneath this, you probably have your little, I'm just gonna leave it alone. But yeah, there's a tiny little spring and pin there that hits the rivets on the back of this washer, and that's what makes your star drag click. So don't lose that. Just kind of leave it in there if you can. I'm just working my way down. And keeping the order of which I found things makes life easier. All right, now we got a little bit of a nut here, counterclockwise to the right. You got a few washers underneath. All right, so I got a little bit of a nut there, one little washer. And then you're going to have your spring tension washers underneath that, and they usually sit back to back, like back to back parentheses. I will put that up on the screen so you can see. But they put them back to back, so there's a nice little gap in there, and that just gives it a little bit of a spring action for your star drag. Looks like another couple washers in here. Two of them actually. One's a little thinner than the other. The thinner one was underneath the thicker one. All right, now I guess we can take this spool out. Little open and close door here. Just flick it on to open. And then it's just a twist clockwise to the right to get that off. Take the old spool out. All right, I'm seeing our first two bearings here. We got one on the spool and one inside the door here. So I guess this one's the easiest to get to. So let's just get a look at it. This reel's brand new, so not going to be any cleanup involved or anything like that, but there will be some factory grease that I'm going to remove, especially off the bearings, because I don't like any grease on my bearings. Just want to keep them nice and oiled. So I'm just going to wipe off any factory grease. Slippery little sucker. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of my Lucas Reel Oil, which I will link in the video description along with everything else I'm using, the mat, the tools, anything you see here will be linked in the video description. So if you need to pick something up for yourself, you can go and grab it really easily. But yeah, man, I like this stuff a lot, and I especially like it because it's got this nice little oil needle here. It's good to just get into some tight spots with, you know. Just going to put a little bit of oil on each side of that bearing, nothing too crazy. Just give it a nice little drink, kind of work it in a little bit. Very light spool on this thing, man. Very light. And next up, we got another bearing here inside our door, and there's a little bit of a clip inside, so we got to remove that. And you just want to look in there and look for the break. You'll see where it's all solid, and then on one spot, that's where it breaks, and you just want to take a tweezers or a screwdriver or something. Keep your thumb over it so it doesn't go flying on you, because it is a spring. And you just want to slowly lift up on it and pry it out of there, just like that. And you can take a little bearing remover tool or whatever you might have, and you just kind of scoop it underneath, pull your bearing right out. All right, we're just gonna give a little wipe off to the bearing. Not too much grease on it, which is cool. And we'll throw it on our tester and just drop a little bit of oil on there. Work that in. Pretty nice. 1 or 2 more drops on the other side, just because it's brand new. I just want to give it a good healthy drink. All right, I'm just going to give a little wipe out to the inside here, make sure there's no grease. Pretty sweet. Don't leave any of those Q-tip fibers behind. Drop that bearing back in. And then we just got to put our clip back in. And usually you can get away with just your fingernail here, and you just want to start with one side, kind of push it in, and then just squeeze it down until you hear a nice little click like that. Just make sure the whole thing's seated down and in place. All right, so first 2 bearings out of the way. Moving on. Let's take this tension knob counterclockwise. Slowly remove that. Another bearing sitting in there. I don't know if we can get at it or not. Looks like there's a little bit of a spring clip in there, I think. But the pinion gear's in the way, so you know what? We're gonna wait till we get on the other side of this, and then I'll see if I can get it out that way. I'm not quite sure how these work here. I've never taken this one apart, so I just want to get a look once we get to that other side of the reel. Screw that back on clockwise. And definitely a bearing there. I just want to make sure I can get at it the right way. So let's take this cover off here. Looks like there is 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5, geez, maybe even 6 Phillips head screws here. So that's interesting. That's a lot. That is a lot. Let's see if we can find that fits here. Start with these on the front side, I suppose. Make sure you got a good lockup, get the right bit. You don't want to strip these things out, man. And I'm just going to put them in the order of which I found them, so later on I can make sure they're in the right spot, just in case any are different lengths or whatever. One was underneath that one. And on the back side here, looks like you got 2 more. Back side. This one's a little tight. All the same length so far. Yeah. Definitely gonna need at least that one. Not sure about that other one though. That one's gonna be on the bottom. I think we got 1 more in here. It's all the way down in there. See if we can grab that one too. Yeah, definitely have to take that one as well. All right, so that one was on the inside there, so we'll just put that that way. All right, let's see what we got. Slide that off nice and slow. Oops. Spring fell off. Get rid of those first, just pull it right off. That way they don't go flying on you. Need something to balance this bad boy on. Here we go. Let's get a look at this side here. All right, so there's definitely the bearing in there. I guess it does come out of that other side. And then in your one way here, it looks like there is one bearing sitting on top. I can get to it. All right, so you got a bearing there. And then on the inside there, you got your roller clutch inner tube. And then you got your one-way bearing in there. I'm just gonna wipe out the one-way bearing. No need to oil or grease it. It's got a little bit of factory grease in there, but you don't have to do anything with that. Just keep it clean. And then this bearing over here, I guess I would have been able to pull out from the other side, it looks like. But I don't know if it's necessary. It doesn't look like there's any grease on it, really. Let's see. I always like to make sure with these. All right, yeah, see, so there is a tiny little bit of a spring clip in there, but it's just a different style one. So let's see if I can get this thing out of here without doing too much. There we go. So it's just a different style spring clip. A little annoying, but now this thing should just pop right out, and it does. Just gonna wipe that off. Give it a little bit of a drink and get it back in there. Ready? Pop that down in there. And hopefully this thing doesn't give me too much of a problem getting this back in. It's just a different style. I'm just gonna start on the one end and just give it a little bit of a squeeze. Keep my thumb over it, and then just take some, there you go, tweezers, and just make sure it pops all the way down. Very tricky, man. That was very, very hard to find and very hard to see when you first take that door off. So just be aware that it's in there if you're going to get that bearing. If you don't want to take it out, you could always just take that door off, drop your oil in there, or drop some oil in from the other side. But if you need to replace that bearing, that's how it comes out. Not so bad, actually. Not so bad. All right, let's hook up this bearing real fast while we got it out. Wipe any grease off. Looks pretty good. A little bit of oil. This is a big bearing, so you can give it a decent amount. On each side. A nice healthy drink. All right, and we'll just throw that back right where it belongs, and we'll just sit in that same spot for later. Let that oil soak. And technically, we can throw our little cap back on, clockwise. And you'll feel it get tight, and then it'll loosen up again once it gets to where it needs to go, and then you're really on there. Save that roller clutch inner tube for later. Moving on, let's see what we got. All right, let's pull this main gear straight up and off. Nice and easy. Pull our pinning gear straight up. Underneath that main gear, you got a little bit of a drag washer and your little ratchet. Pull that up and off. And let's deal with this stuff first. Just gonna give this a wipe. It's got some grease on it. And then underneath you had that drag washer that was sticking to it. Just gonna wipe that off as well. Now it looked like this ratchet piece, these points were pointed towards over here. So when it's just keyed, but when it sits there and you go to push down this button, it hits that perfectly. And then since they're pointed in that direction, when you go to crank on it, pops that back into place. If this is facing the wrong way, it's not going to have that, and you can't run it like that. So just be aware that the points of this face that little contraption there that slides back and forth. All right, let's bust open this drag system, and I'll just work it out this way. So that was that. That was like this. Let's see what we got in here. Bit of a metal top piece here. Just gonna give everything a wipe. Got a drag washer. Very greasy. Jeez. Very, very greasy. We're gonna add our own, so I'm just gonna clean it up, but I actually did a pretty good job greasing it up. Might have been even too much. You got another metal washer. This one's got 4 ears on it. Little pieces that stick out in like a cross pattern shape. And those sit in those little indentations there. Another drag washer. Just want to give everything a nice little wipe off. Be gentle with them, you don't want to bend them. Wipe off some of that black carbon fiber stuff. You got another metal washer here, and then probably one more drag washer underneath. Yes, sir. All right, then we're just gonna give a little wipe out to the inside of this gear. Wow, we actually had a little bit of grease on this gear. It's kind of rare. Usually a lot of these come pretty bone dry. Just a little bit of a wipe out. I don't know if you can see it, but there actually is a little bit of blue grease on those teeth. But we will add some of our own just to show you. All right, so let's hook this drag system up real fast. We're just going to use a little bit of our Cow's Universal Reel and Star Drag grease, linked in the description. Oh, I'm running low, man. Just going to be taking a tiny little bit and spreading it out on these drag washers. Just a tiny, clear, little clean coating. Nothing too much at all. Just work it in with your fingers. If you take too much on, you can always just wipe your hands off with a paper towel. But you just want a nice, clean shine. Nothing too crazy. Place that in. You can take your first metal one. Throw that in on top. You don't have to put grease on the metal ones, just on the actual drag washers, and then it'll obviously get grease all over those anyway. But I want to go nuts. Just a nice little coating. You got your eared washer here. Just want to make sure that's in place. All those 4 points go into those 4 indentations nice and perfect. Wiping this black stuff all over my hands, boy. See all that crap coming off? That can't be good. All right, nice clean coating. And then the final top piece here sits right on top. All right, and then actually we can throw a little bit on this last little drag washer here. Nice little coating. All right. All right, so the drag is all taken care of. Let's move on here. Let's wipe this pinion gear off in the yoke. They got a lot of blue grease stuck on the side of this thing. I just want to get that off. I'm going to be adding my own. Doesn't have to be spotless, but just want to wipe off any of their stuff here. Good. All right, what's going on in here now? Looks like there might be another bearing underneath here we can get to. I don't see a main bearing inside here. I guess that would be that one. So we don't have to oil that. And I guess we could take this off here and see if that other bearing is underneath there, or you can just take your oil and drop a little bit behind it. But let's dive in there and see what we got. I'm gonna switch back to the flathead so I can make sure I don't strip these out. And I'm just gonna take out these two screws right here just to see what's going on underneath there. I don't know if there's a bearing or not. Could be a bushing or a bearing. There's one. There's two, and in theory this should just pull right up. Should anyway. There we go. All right, so there is a tiny little bit of a bearing there. I just want to remember that this side faces this way and it's screwed in there. All right, so if you want to take that bearing off, you got to unscrew that. But what we're going to do is we're just going to drop a little bit of oil right into the side of that bearing. And then we're just going to place it right back where it goes. Make sure those two gears are lined up. So that's nice and oiled now. That was pretty bone dry, by the way. So let's get those screws back in. I'm going to switch back over to a Phillips head. Excuse me. That should work. But I'm going to take a little bit of my blue grease here because I'm going to need something to help me get a little sticky on these bad boys here. Just like that. That way I can get them to stick into place for me. Come on. Just want to be gentle, make sure they're going in nice and straight. I'm not going to put them in all the way, I just want to get them settled into place. A little bit more grease just to pick up this screw. Come on, baby. All right. Now we can tighten them up. Just want to make sure those are in place and catching. All right, tight is tight. So that bearing is all nice and juicy now underneath there. Wow, already feels better. All right, now I don't know if there's another bearing inside underneath here, but what I will do is I will just drop a tiny little bit of oil. This one seemed like it would be a little harder to come out, so I'm just going to put a tiny little drop of oil back in there underneath, just in case there is another bearing on that worm gear. But that feels pretty good. All right, so now we're going to take our paintbrush and we're going to get rid of everything we need to grease up. And I'm going to start with just a tiny little bit here. And you don't need a lot at all, but I'm just going to send a tiny little bit in between these two gears right here. And I'm just going to run them right in between it so it shares it. And they're plastic, you know, so not the biggest deal. But just a little something there, just to keep them a little lubricated. I'm going to take a little bit more. And we're just going to hit a couple little spots here. We're just going to hit this sliding door just a tiny little bit, nothing crazy. A little on the springs. A little bit in this chute here where this goes back and forth. Keep it clean though. Nothing too much. But just a little something. A little bit on these posts here. And if you take too much, you know, just wipe it off, but just want to add a little bit of love in there so it's not bone dry. Help keep some water out of there, help things move a little better. A tiny little bit too much right there, but we're all good. All right, so that's all greased up. Now we just got to grease up our main gear and our pinion gear. Just going to take a little bit more on our brush here. And they already have some, so that's good. But let's take this pinion gear and we're just going to hit these teeth. You don't want to load it up too much because it shares it with the main gear. Just a little bit, just like that. Put a little bit on our yoke where they had it. Just a clean little coating, nothing crazy, dude. All right, now these got to match up with these ramps over here, I presume. So let's just throw this pinion gear in. Let me just make sure this is the right side up. Yeah. So you'll see there's two little ramps here. One here and one here. And you just want to make sure these sit perfect in there. If it's upside down, it's not going to sit all the way flush in there. So just make sure you got it right side up and those ramps match perfect. Oh boy, getting slippery. And we can just put our pinion in there, line up those holes, and drop it on down. Just like that. So it sits nice and flush. Then we got our main. We're just gonna dab it with a little bit of grease. I'm just going to support all the drag washers and stuff. It has a little on there, but just to show you, you want to cover like maybe 50-60% of this, and the best way to do it is to just tap along the outside of the gear and then take your finger and just swipe and mash it right into all those teeth. Just like that. You want to keep the bottom clean. Just want to grab those teeth, and you don't want too much, man, because you don't want the reel to have a big, heavy, chunky, slow feel about it. But you definitely want to get some in those teeth. So just, you know, be mindful of how much they put on from the factory or what it's looking like, depending on if it's bone dry or what have you. But 50-60% smashed into those teeth, and you're all good. All right, we're almost there, man. Now we just got to get this thing back together. Should be pretty easy. So let's start here with that ratchet, and we're just gonna slide that on. It's keyed. Let that fall all the way down. Make sure the points are facing into that little sliding piece. Then you got your drag washer sat right on top of that, and then you got your whole drag system here and your main gear. And this might be a little bit tricky, because some of it is probably keyed. So if you want to build this one by one, you totally can, which might not be a bad idea. Let's see here. I'm just gonna hold that for now. Get that to sit in right up against that pinion. And it'll bounce. Then we can just slide in all our drag washers and stuff. I usually just put it all together, but if it's a pain in the butt and you need to do it separately, that works too. And don't forget that one with the 4 ears on it. Gotta make sure that sits perfect, just like that. Make sure those are all in there. It's rare I have to do that. Usually I can get the whole thing to slide together, but no biggie. All right, so that's all put together nice. And then you have your roller clutch inner tube here. I'm just gonna give a tiny little wipe off too. And that slides right on top of this. And it looks like there's like a more closed area and a more open area. And I believe the more closed area was facing down. So we're gonna place that right on top. And now don't forget about your springs. Oop, I just pushed them together. That's funny. And that's why we put a little bit of grease on these posts here, just for those springs. And you place those back on. Alrighty. And now we're just gonna take a breath. What'd we do? Got all the bearings, got the drag, got the 2 main gears, the pinion, main gear. Everything is greased up, looking good, pretty clean looking. All those bearings that were hiding underneath that, main bearing was sitting over here, we took care of. Everything looks pretty good, man. I think we're ready to rock and roll. Make sure those drag washers, once again, are in place there perfectly with those 4 ears. And I think we're good to go, man. So always take that second though. Just make sure, do you have your springs on? Do you have your roller clutch inner tube on? Just take that second, because sometimes you'll get that case back on, you know, that side plate, and you'll be like, oh man, I forgot about the springs or whatever it is, you know. So just take your time, no rush. So let's get this thing back on here. Slowly slide it down. That bearing might pop out on us a little bit, and it did. And just make sure you got a nice clean flush on that case, and we're just gonna take this bearing and sit it down. Just make sure it sits nice and flush. And you just kind of squeeze it together. Make sure it's all seamless. No big gaps, anything like that. And then we can start getting our screws back on. So I guess let's start with the one on the inside, and I placed them all in the order of which I found them, so that makes life a little bit easier. This longer silver screw came from the inside here. It's gonna be hard to show you, but that's where she's from. We're gonna do that one first. Keeping really good pressure on this door. Good lock up on the screw. And then we had the tiny little silver screw, and that sat in here by the little button. Wish this was magnetic. I don't think it is. Ooh, got just enough grease. Ah, I had just enough grease to get it to stick for a second there. That one's a little tricky, that angle. So just take your time with it. Tight is tight. And we got these on the top back, and they're both the same size, so that's easy. Just gonna feed those in. Just make sure they go in nice and straight. If they fight you a little bit, back off. Don't force anything. Last one on top here. That's a little tricky to get to. It's close. Close quarters. Tight as tight. And then we just got the 2 more on the front. This one's on the top. Oop. All right, last one. Hands are getting a little slippery. All right, tight as tight. Woo, boy. All right, man, we're just about there. Let's get this spool back in. Door back on. Actually, I'm gonna take the tiniest bit of grease that I have left over on my brush, and I'm just gonna hit that tiny little area here, that little C-clip, just a little baby. Put that door back on. Which way did this bad boy go? There we go. Lock that into place. All right, now we just got to get this handle back on, button up a few more things, and we're ready to rock and roll, man. Start with these 2 washers. Thinner one over, or the thinner one rather sits under the thicker one. Put those on. Then you got your spring tensions. Make sure they're back to back. Oop, just lost them, so now I'm gonna have to make sure they're back to back. Very easy to tell though, man. When they're exactly bent the same, they sit right on top of each other. So you just wanna flip one, make sure there's a nice little space. And they're keyed, so gotta throw them on together, make sure they fit over that square. Then you got one more washer. Then you got your nut, and that's gonna be counterclockwise. And make sure that the top of the nut has that groove for the spring. That's facing up so that spring can sit in there nice. You don't have to tighten this thing down like really hard, but you can just hold the spool and just give it like a little quarter turn. And you got your spring, sits perfect right into that nut. Keep your finger on top of that. As you push down on this drag clicker, you don't want that little piece inside to go flying on you. You're just gonna line it up. Push it all the way down and keep pressure. And we're just gonna put our handle on top. Then we're just gonna transfer the weight. Make sure that's nice and even. And just kind of use your fingers to space it out, keep pressure. And then we're gonna put the nut back on, which sometimes is a bit of a pain to get started, but once you get it going, you're good. All right, just gonna give that one little turn just to make sure it's secure. Now I just wanna make sure everything works here. Drags click in. Tension knob is just jacked. That's clicking nice. Button works. Very cool. Now we're gonna just tighten that up, and we're gonna try to make sure a point of this nut is facing that little screw hole here so we can get that cap on to sit perfect. You don't wanna over tighten it, but you just wanna make sure that this piece can sit perfect over it because it's got that same pattern of the nut, you know what I mean? So it's got to be able to sit perfect, or that screw hole for your last little screw here is not going to line up. We are pretty dead on right there. So you may have to loosen it up or tighten it further, but you just got to get it into the right position so that screw is where it needs to be. Take tiny little bit more grease just to stick this last screw. Make sure it goes in nice and straight. Tight as tight. I'm gonna take a little bit more oil, and I'm gonna just drop a little bit inside this worm gear here. A little on one side, a little bit on the other side. And I'm just going to slowly work that in. Take it slow or you're going to shoot oil all over yourself. All right, and then last but not least, we're going to just put one little drop right where the knob meets the handle here. One there, one there. And we're just going to use gravity to send that oil down to those little bearings or bushings or whatever they got on this reel. Make it nice and smooth. All right, it's pretty much game over right there, kids. Not so bad. Not so bad. All right. Feels pretty darn good. Now you just want to take a few minutes to work in all that fresh oil and all that fresh grease. Maybe take it over the couch, watch a little TV, something like that. Work that button a little bit. And just 20, 30 seconds to a minute later, there it is, man. You just all of a sudden feel it break loose and it evens out all that grease on the gears and everything, and you'll feel it happen, man. It just gets super smooth. And then obviously the more you fish with it, the more all that stuff's gonna break in, but feels good, man. Feels really good. Sweet. I'm happy with that. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like, and if you're into this sort of thing, don't forget to hit subscribe. We put a new video out every single week. And definitely check out the rest of the channel. I got a lot of fishing content up, a lot of fishing educational stuff, fishing videos where we're catching some chunks, and obviously reel maintenance videos where I'm taking apart a big collection of reels that I have. So odds are you're gonna find a few more videos on the channel that you might like. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Later. If you want to see more videos just like this one, be sure to check out the rest of the Where We Wild YouTube channel, where we post a brand new video every week. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you get notified whenever we post a new adventure. Thanks for watching.
See ya.